Hello. Hello. Yeah, hi, Henry. How are you?
Hello. Hi.
Yeah,
Yep.
just one moment.
Sure, sure.
Okay. So, sorry for that, but like I'm just trying to fix my issue. And sorry for that. So, how was your day?
Well, it's just starting, so yeah.
So, are you based from Delhi? Like,
I work from Delhi, yes.
okay. So, could we start our interview?
Yep, you can. I mean, you have a lot of questions.
Yeah, I had some questions regarding architectural industry, like like what is your story? Okay, what's your journey? Okay, and how did you become an architecture? Like,
Okay.
so,
Okay.
should we start?
Yeah, sure.
So, tell me about your story. Like, how did you become joining the architecture?
Well, I was um, I was always interested in buildings. I grew up in a village where there was I grew up on an academic campus actually, in a village in Bhutan. And we had a lot of very interesting buildings on the campus. And while I was growing up, they were adding a library building to the campus. And this was like when I was 5 years old. And I
Okay.
used to actually play on the construction site. I used to go and see what people were doing, how they're casting concrete, how they're making staircases. I used to slide on the cement slide. So it wasn't like today where you have to get access to a construction site and there's security and all of that. It was like kaam chal raha hai and you just go and see what's going on and people would be very happy to see you around. So I got interested in buildings really, really early on. And I think I got exposed to very good architecture thanks to my father because he was a professor, but he was also very interested in reading and technology and science and stuff like that. So that kind of book would always be in the house. And I remember like seeing architecture by Gaudi and people like that, Corbusier, for instance, when I was like in class five. So yeah, I've been exposed to good architectures long before I even thought I'd be an architect. And I think that just led to it. I mean, I was very interested in going to art school. Um, I was interested in becoming a sculptor, for instance, but somehow I figured I'll get bored of that. And architecture was probably going to be a more interesting, more lifelong kind of journey. And so I think somewhere in the seventh, eighth, I kind of started moving towards architecture and things like that. And
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah. So tell me about like your education journey and like when did you start your career in architecture?
So
Which year?
I went to the SPA Delhi. At that time, there were no other SPAs. And you had to give individual entrance exams for each college of architecture. So I actually sat for SPA and I sat for SEPT in Ahmedabad and I got into SPA Delhi. And that's where I started in 1998. I joined SPA and I spent 6 years at the SPA. I repeated my second year and passed out in 2004. And then I started working. So I worked with some very interesting practices before actually starting out on my own. I worked with Romi and I worked with S. Ghosh and Associates. And I also worked with Ashish Ganju before I actually set up my own practice in like 2009, 2010. Um, so that's
That's really
broadly where I'm coming from. Yeah.
I- and okay. What is your design process like for conception and to finalize the project?
So I don't know if you're aware of the kind of work we do. We're a very small boutique practice, very niche. We generally work with a very small team of never more than 5 people. We're never larger than 5 people. And Our work is very, very strongly informed by climate and sustainability and local building practices. When we work, a lot of the work is actually responding to site. We take into consideration things like topography, where's the water flowing, where's the rain coming from, where's the sun coming from, how does the site modulate itself, and how do you navigate the site. So it's largely a question of response. It's not a question of image. We don't have a fixed style or a notion that our building will look like this, or even a fixed process. Um, it is a response. So you go to site and the site says things to you. You walk the site, you look at the site, you spend a little while on the site, maybe a day, 2 days, and you start feeling what is important in the site, what's not important in the site, what do your clients want from it also. And then the design is actually a series of responses. It's like saying, okay, I want that view. It's like saying the sun comes from here. So when I have breakfast, where do I want the sun coming from? Um, are we morning people? Are we night people? Um, you know, do you want to enter? Where do you want to enter, for instance? Do you want to enter through sunlight? Do you want to enter through the shade? Is your building sort of in the middle of a lot of trees? Um, so we're doing a project right now, for instance, where our response to site was we will not cut trees.
Okay.
And that was where the starting point was. We said we've got a beautiful site. It's in the middle of Delhi. We've got 9 trees on the site. Can we not cut them?
Okay. So how did you do that? Like the designing or
So we
that
actually
kind of
went to site and actually plotted each tree on the plot, and then said, okay, we can only build where these trees are not there. You
Okay.
know, and it was
That's
a difficult
interesting.
exercise in the beginning, but I find as an architect, the more constraints you have, the more interesting the design process is. Um, so when you have a flat, bland site, it gets very difficult to design actually, because you
Okay.
don't know where to start.
Yeah.
So, like having constraints is our favorite thing. The more difficult the site, the more complicated it looks, the easier it is to design.
Okay.
So that's our process. It's never fixed, but it is. I think it's a spatial approach. It's not a style approach. It's not a technology approach. It's a spatial approach, which is saying, how would you fit into this site? So sometimes we'll start with sections. We'll not start with plans, and the plans will come much later, because if this is the section, then what plan makes that section work is how we'll go about it. So each project is different. Honestly, there's never been a repeat of a process in a true copy. Like we did it here, it worked, so we did it again. We kind of don't do that.
So
Also, we don't have. Yeah,
yeah.
sorry.
Yeah. Also, it take too much time, I guess.
Our work takes a lot of time. We take like roughly 3 times the. I know because I've worked with other practices, and I think we take about 3 times as long to design a project than somebody else would take. Not because we're not working, it's because we're just working too much. We'll check everything 2 and 3 times. Is it working? Can this be made better? Can that respond more fine tuned? Can that response be more fine tuned? And we keep revisiting everything at least 2 or 3 times before we even take it to a client the first time.
Okay.
So we spend a huge amount of time in the design process, because once you get that right, it's like buildings just get built.
Yeah.
You get the part okay, and okay, there'll be a few mistakes, there'll be a few deviations, but you'll get 90% of the job done right if you spend a lot of time in the beginning. Otherwise, it's like firefighting. Acha, iska kya karna hai, uska kya karna hai. And we don't enjoy that at all. Um,
Okay. No, no, it's interesting. No, it's an interesting. Like I made lots of architecture, but no one said like they will spend the more time in the like the first phase. Okay, so that's what I said.
we spend most of our time there.
Okay.
Because the other thing is, I don't know about other practices. We work with contractors who are very low skilled. Some of them don't know how to read drawings even.
Okay.
So we
So
have to work with people like that. So you have to do something which is very clear and very simple to understand in the beginning. And once they understand it, their mind doesn't change. So you try and get it right in the first shot so that the first draft is really good and it just moves from there. So spending a lot of time in the beginning is much more useful for us. Like we don't send like hundreds of drawings to site. We'll send like one set of drawings and
One
maybe a
shot.
few more drawings after that. And then it's all on the phone, it's all on conversations, it's site visits. So we're very hands-on in that sense.
That interesting. And like, how did you typically source the product and the material for that project?
So this is a very how do I call it? We're not how do you call it, market friendly firm. We don't follow the market. We don't care what's in the market actually. Um, we look at where we are located and what works best for where we are. Okay. So one project, for instance, my first project in Uttarakhand, we built with salvage material. We broke a building, we were rebuilding in that place, and we built with 50% of the material came out from that old building only.
Okay.
We weren't looking for material, and that was the idea, that we will reuse the existing building. Other places, our main approach to choosing material is what is easy for the locals to build with. So we largely build with local construction crews. We don't take contractors from outside. Like I will not do a project in Uttarakhand with a contractor from Delhi. I will hire a local contractor. So I'll try and find out what can they build, what is their skill level, what are they comfortable with, um, what kind of material do they use, and we'll make a project that they can build. As opposed to make a project that I want and then I have to find contractors and there's a whole mess happening there. It's much more sustainable in the sense that a local community is part of your building process. So if there are local trained masons, local steel welders, local wood carpenters, we will do things that they can
Do that.
comfortably build at site.
Yeah.
So that's how we source materials. So it's very, very local. So we will
Because
check ki
yeah,
aas paas kya ho raha hai.
yeah, because they actually they will know better like how the things that go on that place.
See, not only do they know better, but you have to also understand that buildings are continuous processes. Like you build it and you leave it, right?
Yes.
5 years later, some tap is going to get spoiled, some roof is going to leak, some window is going to have a damage, right? If a local person has built it, they can go in and repair it. But
Yeah.
if your tap is some German crazy thing which you have, and you have to import a guy from Delhi or fly him in from Germany to fix it, I mean, what's the point? Your client has to wait 3 months for that to happen, or 2 months, or 2 weeks even. Whereas if it's a local guy, is like, mobile uthao, phone karo, guy will come, fix your problem, right? And he knows where the problem is.
Yeah.
So that sense of maintenance, that sense that buildings are going to be used, lived in, have damage, and require repair is also part of the design process, in at least for us. I don't know about other people, but for us, it's hugely part of the design process. Right? How will it be maintained in the future? Will
Yeah.
it be easy to maintain?
Yeah. And like, how did you manage the time and the resources to ensure like the timely completion of the project?
That is difficult. Timely completions, well, um, see, like commercial projects, we don't have deadlines. Okay, we
Okay.
have broad deadlines. Okay, it'll take 18 months, it'll take 2 years. Some projects we've managed to stay within deadlines, some projects we haven't. It's quite normal. Um, but on the kind of sites we build, which is largely in the hills, where sometimes, like right now, we have terrible weather and we're actually stalled construction on some of our projects because it's raining too much, or
Yeah.
it's difficult to get material. So we do get some amount of delay, that's for sure. But I think the key is having a very clear um, idea of what the design is, and then being ready to improvise. So if something is not available, have an alternative ready. If some wood detail you were thinking of is not available, or is getting too expensive, or cannot be produced at the site, what is the next alternative? So we allow for a certain amount of change also, a certain amount of, let us say, modification or evolution, which actually helps delivery, because it means that you're not stuck कि यही करना है और ये जितना time लगेगा यही करेंगे. You say, okay, we can't do that. What's a good alternative? and you take that option and you build with it. So it helps save time, definitely.
Okay. And just one minute. Or let's say, or can you discuss any challenges you faced in a previous projects?
I think the biggest challenge we face is that I mean, we're facing it in some of our ongoing projects also, is this obsession that clients want to know exactly what it looks like before it's built. They want this flashy 3D view, they want this photorealistic render. And sometimes they projects evolve, they change, they decisions. You make a decision 2 years ago, and while the project is being executed, you realize that maybe that decision could be made better, you know, or that solution could be improved, and it means there's a change that is required. But many people are not open to that idea. So that's one thing. The other thing which I found very problematic is that people don't understand the notion of using less, you know, consuming less, building less, build as much as you need. um, it's okay in Delhi, you can build a 15-foot by 25-foot bedroom and do as much air conditioning as you want. um, But if you go to Uttarakhand, up in the hills at 2,000 meters above sea level, and you make a 15 by 20, 25-foot
it's
bedroom,
it's very hard.
you can't you
You
can't
can,
keep it warm in winter,
yeah.
no matter what you do. And the kind of energy spent, plus there are power cuts. There's not enough wood to burn. So in more critical climatic situations, you have to be very careful about how much you build. And that is very difficult to convince people. Ki itna hi banao, you know, don't make it bigger, don't make it larger. So I've had that challenge. And I think we're one of the few practices that actually encourages clients not to build. We're like, please don't build so much. Please make it smaller. Do you really need so much? And that's a serious challenge, because most people have this big obsession, you
ओके,
know.
सो जैसे आपने कहा तो क्लाइंट समझते हैं क्या ऐसे, जैसे आपने कहा कि क्लाइंट्स को ज्यादा नहीं बनाने के लिए, तो क्लाइंट
कभी
शुड बी
कभी
अंडर।
समझते हैं, कभी कभी नहीं समझते हैं. नाउ इफ इट्स अ वेरी कमर्शियल ओरिएंटेड क्लाइंट, उनको समझाना मुश्किल हो जाता है.
या
बट इफ इट्स फॉर इंस्टेंस अ क्लाइंट हु इज लिविंग देयर, like we had this with one of our projects. A client got us to design a 5-bedroom house which was massive. Okay, and मैंने बहुत झगड़ा किया कि नहीं बनाते. We finally designed. Then they started living there. 2 years into living there, when they were living in this other smaller, they said, we want to revisit this design. We don't really think it's making sense. It's too large, it'll be too difficult to maintain, and we will not know how to keep it warm. And I was like, Acha, finally you guys came around, you know. And I was very happy that they actually came around. And like, okay, wo project to gaya, matlab that building design has been parked, shelved. But in a sense, I'm very happy because I'm seeing they're able to understand that notion that in this kind of a climate, you need a more responsible approach to designing a house. So we've actually gone back to the drawing board and we're designing a smaller house with smaller rooms. And yeah, it's a little more work for us, but not like we're not getting paid. So I'm not going to say it's like free ka kaam. We get paid for it. But the sensibility is what I'm happy about, that people are understanding that you can't do that. It's no point in doing it. That there needs to be a more sensible approach to
the
uh,
place.
design, and that to me is being sustainable. You know, it's not like it's carbon neutral or it's like zero energy. I mean, it's like, can we use less first of all? Can we start by using less? And to me, that's the challenge. Some clients take it very easily. Some just don't understand, and it's very difficult to make them understand.
Yeah, I understand. And mm, okay, and okay, yeah. Uh, like how did you handle the challenges or modification to a project during the construction phase? Like you told me that last time, you also modification in a project in the construction phase.
Yeah.
So how do you do that?
Oh, that's normal. For us, that is absolutely absolutely normal. It's not something we don't expect. It's not something which shouldn't happen. It's not a problem. We don't treat it like that. We treat it as evolution. So we treat every project in the sense that a project, when we start, or a concept, is a approach. And when we start building it, if there are opportunities to make that approach better, there are opportunities to increase, let us say, architectural value or experience value within the building, we will take it. We will not say कि design हो गया, structure हो गया, इसको modify करने में इतने ज़्यादा पैसे लगेंगे, इसको दोबारा से design. We don't say any of that. We're like, if does it make the project better? If our notion or our feel is it makes the project better, we just go with it. We're like, let's do it.
That's great.
So it's not a problem for us. Um, we just say, yeah, great opportunity. Let's see what we can do with it. So all our projects have this. Almost all our projects evolve. They all have a little bit of
Modification.
like modification, a little bit of change. And I found it actually makes the project better. It's not making it worse. Because I think the key is you have to ensure that you are making the decision, not the client. You see the value in what they're saying and you interpret it. And then it becomes a great thing. So that's how we do it.
Uh, let's say, can you discuss your any experience you have working let's say that working in a project in a different culture context.
Different cultural context. I don't know. I don't think I've I've worked. I mean, all my project proposals have been Delhi, Uttarakhand, Himachal, and one or two in Bhutan. And this is all my cultural context. I've grown up in these places. My childhood has been in all of this. So it's not a different cultural context in that sense. I don't think I've had that, where I'm dealing with a culture I don't understand, or people I don't know, or a climate or a geography I'm not familiar with. So no, I don't think I could answer that.
Okay. And so can you discuss your experience with the designing for the multifunctional space, such as mixed use development or adapter reuse project?
Adaptive reuse. We've done a small one in Hisar. Um, Mixed use, I don't know. Our work is largely not in that space. We're not doing large scale development at all. We've done some small proposals, but we haven't done mixed use. We don't work with developer kind of clients largely, or almost entirely. We don't work with that kind of client. So we haven't got that opportunity of doing public architecture. So mixed use not happening. Adaptive reuse, we've done some, and it's very interesting. It's honestly interesting, but it's also got a lot of, particularly when you're working with old buildings which don't have drawings, where there's no documentation. It is a little, how do you call it? Risky or difficult, because you really don't know what you're doing, in the sense that how strong is the building. Sometimes you can't even get engineers to assess it. That kind of stuff is the problem. The design aspect is actually not difficult. What to design, what to build, how to execute. That part is not difficult. I think the documentation part is the difficult part. Invariably, even when you're designing like an office in a multi-story building, which has been like refurbished, there are no drawings, there's no documentation. When you're doing redoing people's apartments, all that is adaptive reuse in a sense, but there's zero documentation. Our country does not believe in documentation. There is, like, you go to a housing society, they'll be like, drawing nahi hai. So I had this crazy situation where I was making a proposal for completely retrofitting more FAR onto housing colonies in Dwarka. So a whole housing society, we were proposing a retrofit to increase the FAR by 50%. And they did not have drawings. And that is like for 5 floors, where you're adding extra volume on all floors. No structural drawing, no documentation. and they expect you to create proposals, and plus
It's
nobody
more.
wants to invest in doing studies to establish structural strength, for instance. No, all that is like expected to be there. So that kind of stuff is very difficult to deal with. The design aspect is actually fairly easy.
Okay. Can you discuss your approach to continuing a professional development or staying updated with the industry or advancement and the best uh, practice?
Well, I think one of the nice ways to stay connected with new ways of thinking is to teach. So I till last year I used to teach a lot. I used to teach half my time. I used to spend teaching, half my time I used to spend practicing. This year I've actually stopped teaching. I'm just going to focus on work. Um, the other thing I find very uh, a good way of staying abreast is um, just following good work from unknown practices. Like architects, you don't hear of practices that are not celebrated, practices which are quiet and doing their thing in a very responsible manner. I think there's a lot to learn from young practices um, who are actually creating new architecture and new ways of doing stuff, as opposed to the old masters who've done their thing and unka ho gaya hai, technically, but they're still producing a lot of work. But their approaches are not interesting. Um, so yeah, and also I think looking at allied disciplines, I find a lot of inspiration and information coming in from the worlds of fashion, from the worlds of automotive design, technology, machines. So I look at all of that too, because there's a lot of opportunity to integrate that kind of thinking into architecture, even for the most simple things. Um, and then, yeah, of course, there are webinars
So,
and seminars.
yeah. So, have you also gone through in, let's say, the fairs, the online platforms that you can learn a lot of things like the designing or that kind of process?
Um, I'm a very slow learner, very, very slow, painfully slow learner. Also, I'm not very good with being told how to do things. I like to experience this firsthand. So I prefer to be interacting with whatever it is. If it's a machine, if it's a bicycle, if it's a technology, I will learn from a site. I will learn from seeing what is being done. Um, Instruction is not my favorite way of doing it. So yeah, till from a point of view of discussion, yes, it's nice. It opens you up, but actual learning for me has happened by looking at what people do, by looking at what people have done before me, by looking at what people are doing, seeing technologies executed. I find that much more long lasting in terms of learning.
Okay. And so, what are the things that motivates you to stay updated or keep grow in architecture?
I think the most important thing that motivates me is my own. I'm competing with myself.
Okay.
Have I got better? Have I got better? Am I doing it better than I did it 1 year ago? Am I doing it better than I did it when I started practicing? Um, Also, am I sticking to my principles? You know, so these are the things that motivate me. Like it's not. I don't have architectural motivations. Don't come from like how many projects I've built or who's building what. I actually, yeah, what really
Motivate.
makes me do something is, can I do it better than I did it last time, even if I'm doing the same thing? So even if I'm making a railing, can I make it better than the last project? If I'm making a roof, if I'm making a skylight, it's always like, am I taking it further than I did in the last one? And that's what keeps me going. It's a very small kind of motivation, but it really works for me. It's like,
Yeah, that
and
was just
travel. The other thing that motivates me is travel. I love to travel to my sites. I find that very, very enjoyable. Like get on a motorcycle, ride to your site, um, enjoy the journey, enjoy the landscape, enjoy the people you meet, see what is happening around it, and then do what you're doing there. So that also motivates me a lot. Getting on my motorcycle and doing 500 kilometers to my site, or 350 kilometers, or whatever it is, and that journey is also very motivating.
Uh, can you discuss your experience? Like you also told me that like you have done the project in Bhutan, or you have done the project in Uttarakhand, let's say the Himachal. So what is the difference between to that place or to like Uttarakhand or Himachal?
See, Bhutan, I did proposals. I haven't built anything yet, but there's a lot of similarity, and then there's a lot of difference. So similarity comes in, for instance, how you place the building in the site, how you respond to the sunlight, how you respond to where's the river flowing. Also, the idea that buildings get lighter as you go up. So the ground floor will be heavy, the first floor will be lighter, the second floor will be very light. You will never have a third floor in most cases. Um, so that notion, if you look at Himachal, you look at Uttarakhand, you look at Nepal, you look at Bhutan, you even look at the Northeast, that logic stays. There's a certain principles which are the same. They all have serious earthquake issues.
Yes.
Um, there's a lot of local construction techniques which are dying out, which you want to keep. So that is also there. So in a sense, there's a lot of similarity, but the building language is different because materials are different, craft techniques are different. But yeah, it's kind of both similar and different, and very interesting use of building techniques. So
Okay.
that's quite.
Okay. Let's say. Can you let's say what are the things? What are the things and the changes you see in the today times when you start your career? Like what are the things that change?
Excessive desire for air conditioning. One thing which I particularly don't like. There's too much air conditioning. People want air conditioning everywhere all the time. Um, the notion that quality of life is equivalent to square foot of life. How many square foot you live in is a way of describing your quality of life. I find it very makes no sense. Um,
Okay.
like people have 5 and 6 bedroom houses, and but it doesn't describe a quality of life to me. Um, so that has definitely changed. People are wanting bigger and more air conditioning, and the fun part is what it's doing is, instead of bringing them closer to nature, it's actually taking them further from nature. you know so you're talking about being sustainable, but you're actually not being sustainable. You're talking about, I want to live in the hills, but you have an air conditioned house. uh, you're saying, I want a house in the hills, but you will build 20 50 to 60% of your plot as a building, and then you'll have no place to actually live in the hill, which is sit outside in the sun under a tree, enjoy the rain. So I find that that has changed. I mean, maybe it's the fact that people have more money now, then they can afford more. So it directly translates into bigger buildings, more space, more spending power. Uh, and that's definitely impacted the kind of architecture we have. Uh, you know,
Okay.
size and the scale of architecture for personal use is much bigger now than it used to be.
And like which architects that motivates you most? Like let's say we are talking about like the architects that inspire you, like in your childhood
So
or now.
I have very, I would say, not very well known inspirations. So I think one of my earliest inspirations would be this Spanish architect called Enric Miralles. Somebody he really inspired me when I was in college. He was there. There was Louis Barragan. I think later on, I mean, in the early years, even Corbusier for a bit. But I think in my later years, the architects who really sort of made a difference to me were people like Laurie Baker. And Laurie Baker would be one for sure. Who else? Corbusier kind of not really, not much. Richard Rogers is somebody I really, really admired. Just fantastic. Not like I would ever build like him, but just fantastic work. Um, and then, yeah, then of course there's in more recent times people like Ashish Ganju, who I was fortunate to work with also. I mean, exceptionally. I mean, have really, really left a large influence on my work. So yeah, people like that, Ashish Ganju would be amongst my biggest influences. Not that I build like him at all, but definitely took a lot of sensibility from him. Um, and who else? Who else? Sami Padora is somebody I really like. I really, really admire his work. Um, I like the amount of research he puts into creating whatever he creates. So that's another practice I really like.
Okay.
Um,
Like Hani, like we had a limited times, but I really enjoyed this time. I hope you too. Okay, and I really the question that you told me, that like your experience, you spend the most of the time in a let's say the construction phase and the first phase, like it's helped
yeah,
you more. Okay, to after that. So I really enjoy this time. Like I spend most of the time with the different architects. Okay, but
well, yeah,
like this is called the difference, okay, and
yeah.
I believe that like it's your video, like that our conversions that help you to help to under the different architects, they can explore in architecture, they can learn a lot of things from this video. Thank you for that.
I hope so.
Okay,
Thanks so much. Yeah,
yeah, thank
it
you,
was
Andy.
great talking to you.
Yeah,
Yep, great talking to you. Bye.
bye.
Thanks.
Yeah, bye.